Grab your drinks and have a seat. It's time for serial killers.
Hi again. It's us.
Again.
We just literally recorded. No. We just spoke for like 10 or 15 minutes until Jay was like, and I'm like, what are you laughing at? And he's not recording. That's his one job. This is like the seventh time he's done this.
It's the second time, right?
It is not the second time.
It is.
No, it is not.
Yeah, because Sierra's done it once.
Okay, well. Hi, happy Thanksgiving.
Hello. Gobble, gobble.
When you're listening to this, it's Thanksgiving. We are obviously not recording it on Thanksgiving morning, but when you're listening to this, it probably is Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving. I'm T.
And I'm Jay.
And we are here to talk to you about serial killers.
And for those of you that don't celebrate Thanksgiving, happy Thursday. Hope it's a good one. So what are you drinking today?
What am I drinking? Well, it is holiday season, and I am drinking one of my most favorite holiday drinks, and that is a gingerbread soy latte, specifically from Starbucks. And I understand that that's controversial, and I don't care. And here's why. Because I used to work for Starbucks, and I worked there with my aunt, who is actually like my best friend. She's not really an aunt. And when we were working there, gingerbread lattes came out for the first time. And her and I discovered gingerbread soy tasted fantastic. So when I get a gingerbread soy, it takes me back to those times. And it's my nostalgia drink that I like to drink. And I'll drink it a couple times a month until it goes away. There was one time where Starbucks actually stopped the gingerbread, and I boycotted them the whole season. I didn't drink a single drink because I was like,
because you don't really like anything else.
No, I really
don't.
That
hard.
Yeah, I really don't drink that. I don't drink Starbs very much. But this is the one time that I'm willing to put aside all my feelings because I'm selfish as hell, and I want that drink. What about you? What are you drinking?
Well, I used to have a holiday drink, which I don't anymore because it's too sweet, but that was the peppermint white mocha.
You know, you could get it like half the flavor.
I know.
And it's still really, because I half the flavor in the gingerbread. You should try
it. Try it. And,
you should try it.
You know, I love eggnog, which I shouldn't because it hurts my belly, but I love it.
Do you like eggnog lattes?
But I don't.
You know why? Because it has coffee.
Yeah, and
you don't like coffee flavor.
Nah.
And so the eggnog, you used to like eggnog lattes, though. What's really crazy is you used to like the eggnog lattes.
Not anymore.
Maybe it's just Starbucks eggnog lattes.
Maybe I've tried them at other places. It's not so good.
You liked our eggnog lattes?
A little bit. It was a little bit better, but I also think we had a little lighter of a roast.
Yeah, we did.
Which made our coffee amazing.
Phenom.
Ooh, maybe eggnog with white coffee.
That's gross. I don't think that would taste good at all.
That would be real sweet.
Terrible.
Anyways, what I'm drinking today is none of those. It's actually a peppermint tea, as it is cold and gloomy out.
Peppermint for the season.
Yep. And it helps with, any congestion that you may have. Peppermint's good for that. So
we got candy canes too if you want to eat the candy canes.
But yeah, that's what I'm drinking today. And it's hot. And yes, I put a little scoop of sugar in it. So get over it.
It's fine. All good.
But that's not what we're here to talk about.
Well,
I mean,
that's
it is,
not the only thing.
But it's not what we're here to focus on.
Thing.
It's not what the people came for.
You don't know. Some people may turn us off after we tell them what we drink.
I really doubt it. And if you do, you're missing out on all the good stuff.
I mean, maybe, but maybe they just need like, oh, what should I have to drink today? Let's see what J and T are drinking, and let's see if I want one of those.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm just saying.
I don't know. Maybe you ran to the cupboard and got a peppermint black tea and made it yourself.
Or maybe you ran to Starbucks and got a gingerbread soy latte. If you have not tried a gingerbread soy, I highly recommend. It is very delicious.
Unless you don't like gingerbread or soy,
then maybe not. Maybe
have the black tea.
Maybe back off of that one. That's all. It's fine. So we are here to talk about something other than what we're drinking, though.
And what is that?
We're here to talk about a serial killer.
By the name of?
Harold Shipman.
Oh, Shipman.
So if that name sounds a little familiar, it should. If you are a real true crimer, this name should sound familiar because he's a pretty famous, I think. Anyway. I mean, does the name sound familiar to you?
Oh, yeah. I knew as soon as I read it, I knew who it was.
Okay, because I'm like, I feel like when I saw his name, when I pulled his name, this is my reaction. Going through my book, land on my page, and I'm like, Harold Shipman. That's what I did. I was like, damn. And then at first I was like, do I really want to do? Because he's more popular one. I was like, whatever. Yeah, I'll do it. So that was my thought because I like doing the ones that I'm like, oh, I've never heard of this one. So the thing is, though, Harold Shipman's story, he's kind of boring. There's not a lot to it. So it's like, whatever. There's nothing. He's not very fun to research. He wasn't very fun to research. So, it's going to be like a episode, but we got to talk about him.
Let's do it.
So the reason you may recognize who Harold Shipman is his nickname is Dr. Death. So there is a movie out that is Dr. Death. That is about Harold Shipman. Most people know him as Dr. Death. But apparently he also has a nickname of the Angel of Death, which I disagree. Whoever called him, maybe he called himself the Angel of Death because I'm like, I don't see him being an angel at all. So I don't know why you would put him as Angel of Death, but whatever. He has 215 to 250 victims. And the murder dates are 1975 to 1998. This happened in England. His method of murder was poison. And a characteristic of his murder is that his patients were his victims because he's a real doctor. So Dr. Death is not like he's actually a doctor. So Harold is born January 14th, 1946 in Nottingham, England. And I know it's not pronounced like that. I fucking know it.
Nottingham.
I don't know how it's pronounced. I feel like it's like Nottingham, not Nottingham, because I'm an idiot. So I'm going to say Nottingham, England. Apologies. I'm sorry to all of my, all of our UK listeners. I botch your guys' names, but I do love your names. They got the shires, and we're going to talk about a couple shires, and I am excited. So his parents were working class people, and they were devout Methodists. He was the second of 3 children. His father, Harold Shipman, was a lorry driver. I do not know what a lorry is.
It is a truck driver.
Do you know that for reals?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Because I've been over there.
Well, you've not been to the England.
I've been to Europe, and it's called that in other areas. But I also watch movies
so do
that are based in England, and I know what a lorry driver is.
Okay, all my UK people, you let me know if he's right, because I don't know about that. And then Harold's mother's name was Vera. Now Harold did play rugby when he was young, and he was actually really good at it. Side note, our son played rugby, and it is by far one of my more favorite sports to watch. I like it better than football. And my son, who was the avid football player, he played football from the age of, from the 4th grade all the way through high school. He even said that he absolutely loved rugby more than he did football because it's considered a gentleman's sport. So if you don't know what rugby is, it's kind of like football, but better. I don't know how else to explain it. The part that my son specifically liked, though, is that you give it all on that field. You go out there, you play your heart out, you beat the crap out of each other. And then afterwards, you leave it on the field. So because he was young when he played, we would have barbecues, like hot dogs and stuff, that we'd invite the other team that they just played against, have a barbecue, hang out. But I guess in England, they go to the pub and they like have beers and they just kind of let it go. Like in football, you like hate your opponents, and then when the game's over, you still hate your opponents.
Yeah.
And you like are it's like bred into your brain that like you will never like them again. Like in sports in general, my son would do track, and he'd run into kids from football and they'd be like, "Oh, you're a football player." And it was like a weird vibe because it's like you're supposed to hate each other. It's just totally different. So, rugby, good sport. Anyways, so Harold also became a long distance runner at some point, and he was fairly accomplished at that as well. And then he does become the vice captain of the athletics team in his last year at school. No idea what a vice captain is. I don't even know what an athletics team is because, I mean, in the United States, if every sport is its own sport. So I don't know if the athletics team is just like, I don't know. But that was what he did. That's what he did. So we can establish that Harold Shipman was an athletic kid, basically. He was into athletics. He did good. However, it was also reported that he was actually kind of isolated from his peers and that he was kind of a loner. But this is not because of like what we would expect. So when I say, oh, he's a loner, you think like he's a super quiet kid who doesn't want to be around people, introverted, right? Like that's what you'd think. No, he was isolated from his peers because he actually had a superiority complex from a young age. He thought he was better than everybody else. And so part of this actually was supposedly, now again, I'm just reporting what is written out there, okay? But supposedly he was very close with his mother, and his mother talked him up. Like as moms do, to be fair, like you always want to talk your kids up because you want your kids to feel the best about themselves as you can, right? But he took that shit to the heart. And so he really thought he was better than everybody else. And you know what, to be fair, I mean, if he was as good at athletics as it said he was, I mean, he probably thought, I mean, he might have been better than everybody else. But due to that, people didn't want to be his friend because it was like, who wants to be friends with somebody who constantly thinks they're better than you? Literally nobody. So he's not a loner in that sense. He's a loner because he genuinely just thinks he's better than everybody else. On June 12th, 1963, Harold's mother dies of lung cancer. He's about 17 years old when his mom dies. Now, because he had been really close to her, he actually was very deeply affected by her death. First of all, like it struck him. But he also was there for every step. So once she was diagnosed with lung cancer, he was like by her side for everything. And as it got closer to her actual passing, doctors would come to their home to administer her morphine to help, ease the pain, especially because we're talking about the 60s. Like cancer treatments are very different now than they were in the 60s. And so Harold would sit there with her as she's in pain. He would sit there with her, all these things. And then these doctors would come in. They would give her this morphine. And he would literally recognize that every time they would bring in this morphine, it took away her pain. Even though he knew that her cancer was terminal, it gave her relief. And he was able to recognize that. Supposedly, after his mother dies, this is when he decides he wants to go to medical school. I mean, I could see that. Your mom dies of something like cancer. Maybe you want to become a doctor to help people. Keep it from happening to other people, whatever the case may be. It does take him 2 years to get accepted into Leeds Medical School. And that's purely just because he actually failed the entrance exam on the first try, which I'm not even going to dog nobody because medical school is not going to be easy to get into. So good on you, I guess. In 1966, so he is about 20 years old. In 1966, Harold meets and marries Primrose May Oxtoby, and they do stay married actually, and they do end up having 4 children, just living the life. Now, 4 years after he gets married, Harold does graduate from Leeds School of Medicine with a medical degree. So he goes through the whole thing, becomes a doctor. Now, the first couple of years, he actually works at the General Infirmary in Yorkshire.
Love it. There's one of the Shires.
Then in 1974, Harold begins working as a general practitioner in West Yorkshire. I told
Hit it
you.
again.
Now in 1975, Harold is caught forging prescriptions. Now he had been prescribing himself pethidine, which is also known as Demerol, which is a painkiller. Now this was for his own personal use. So he wasn't using it. He wasn't forging it to give to patients. He was literally forging it to give it to himself. He was taking it. Now he was fined and he did have to attend rehabilitation, but he didn't like lose his license or anything. But they basically looked at him and said, we need to get this shit under control. Then in 1977, Harold becomes a general practitioner again. So after going through rehab and getting his shit straight. And he ends up working at Donnybrook Medical Center in Hyde. Now, he stays with this center until 1993 when he starts his own practice. Now, he has a reputation among his patients as being good, helpful. He has good bedside manner. His patients like him. His colleagues, on the other hand, it's not that they don't like him, but he's a little too know-it-all-y and
because just like in rugby, just like when he was a kid, he thought he was better than everybody else.
Yeah. So the fact that he had that issue when he was an adult tells you that most likely he did have it also as a child. Now, in March of 1998, suspicions start to rise about his practice that he has. So he no longer works for Donnybrook. He's got his own medical facility that he's had for 5 years. And there start to be some suspicions around his medical practice. And it's because he seems to have a really high number of patients who are just like dying. And people were just kind of like, it kind of triggers some stuff. Now, I'm not going to name every person who was murdered by Harold because that's 250 people. That would take a very long time to go through every single one, name and age. However, if you are interested in who these people are, Google it. They got a whole ass list and you can Google it. But what I will say is that most of his victims were between the ages of 60 to 80 years old. Now, there were a few 40 and 50-year-olds, and there were a few in their 90s, but a good majority were between 60 and 80. His victims were both men and women, so he didn't even have, honestly, he didn't have really a victim MO. He didn't have a profile.
He didn't have, a preference or whatever.
No,
it was just
he just had...
who was available.
Yes. His oldest victim was 93-year-old Ann Cooper, and his youngest victim was 41-year-old Peter Lewis. So that gives you the age range of these people. Now, he would claim that the victims were in some way of poor health and that he would give them an injection of diamorphine or Demerol, and the dose he would give them would be a lethal dose. Now, a lethal dose of this drug can cause respiratory failure. Sometimes the people that he would give this to would die in his office, and then other times they would go home and die at home. Now, he would then sign some of their death certificates, and when he would sign them, the ones that he did sign, he would claim that they died of natural causes. Now, he did not
love Dr. Death.
He did not sign all of the death certificates because, like I said, sometimes they would die at home and then they would bring in, coroners and stuff. But the ones that he did sign, he would sign the death certificates of his patients and he would put most of them down as dying from natural causes. Now, on March of 1998, a woman named Deborah Massey, she works at a local funeral parlor, and she contacts Dr. Linda Reynolds at Brooks Surgery in Hyde. And she basically wants to express a little bit of concern that she has. Deborah has now noticed that a large number of the clients that she has been receiving at her funeral home were specifically from Dr. Harold Shipman. And she's concerned because the number continues to grow. So she's getting these clients in, and I'm going to call them clients because they're not patients because they've passed, but whatever. So she gets these people in, and when she checks to see, whatever it is that she's looking for, Dr. Harold Shipman was the doctor, or Dr. Harold Shipman was the one who signed their death certificate. And there was one statistic that I saw that it was the amount of people that he had put into funeral homes was 10 times higher than the next highest doctor. The South Manchester District Coroner, John Poehler, also was contacted by Dr. Linda Reynolds. Now, so Deborah calls Dr. Reynolds. Dr. Reynolds now calls the district coroner, John Poller, and basically brings up this concern like, hey, there's a high amount of deaths found in this funeral home from Dr. Shipman. The one thing that really stood out was that not only was it the high number of deaths, but it was also the high number of cremation forms for specifically the elderly women that Dr. Shipman needed to have countersigned by another doctor. So he would bring this form to one of the other doctors and be like, hey, they want this body cremated. And they'd have to, so the fact that not only was a bunch of people are dying, but also you're cremating all these people. Which at the time in the night, I mean, I don't know, I guess, if cremation was popular or not, but I don't know how many people actually want their family members cremated. That's all. So
but you got to get rid of the evidence.
Right. Well, that's what he wanted to do. Because every death certificate or whatever that he'd fill out, he would mark cremation boxes. But if the family didn't want that, they wouldn't have it. But if he had them co-signed or countersigned, like, that's what they do. So police are contacted about this suspicion because they're just kind of like, well, this just seems weird. And police do go and they do look into this. They go and talk to Harold and they're like, hey, can we take a look at your records? And Harold's like, yeah, sure. Harold has all of the proof and all the paperwork needed to justify for these victims. So every single, in his computer and in his files, it literally states every person matches who has passed away and their cause of death matches. And when they look at the medical records, pretty much all of them, it said they had some sort of ailment or they were of poor health before they died. So they're older, whatever. At the time, the police were like, yeah, I mean, this pretty much seems legit. There's not really anything we can do.
Just an unlucky doctor.
Yeah. And, to be honest, again, they're all older people. Maybe they were just like, well, he's like a geriatric doctor. Like, what do you expect? I don't know. I do need to note, though, that the police did not even do the most basic checks on Harold Shipman at all. Like they went in and talked to him. But like, if you're investigating somebody who is under suspicion, like, whoa, there's a lot of deaths here, you'd think you would maybe do a background check. They didn't even do a background check.
No, they probably did like other people and called ahead and was like, hey, we're going to come through on Thursday at 5.
They did not even look. Okay, first of all, they didn't even look into his background. They didn't look to see how many people he had, compared to other people. They didn't do anything. They did not do the most basic shit. But had they done a background check, they would have found that he had a criminal record. Because they would have found that he had forged prescriptions in the past. They would have found that he had a record. And that would have maybe put a little more suspicion onto, okay, wait, hold on. And never mind the fact that the prescription was for a painkiller that could kill somebody if it's given in a high dose. But they didn't want to do that kind of work. So fine. So in August.
Walked in, looked around, said, this seems legit, walked out.
Yeah. So in August of 1998, a taxi driver named John Shaw contacts the police and he says, I have a concern that I would like to bring to your attention of a man named Dr. Harold Shipman. He said, I am kind of concerned because Dr. Shipman, I'm like worried that he's murdering people and specifically his patients, which they're just like, where is this coming from? And he says, well, here's the thing. I'm a taxi driver. Literally, my job is to drive people to and from. I have driven multiple elderly people to Dr. Shipman's office, and either they don't come back out or I bring them home and find out they die later on that day. Multiple of his specific patients.
Either that's like his turf that he
probably was
gives rights to, or it's like a smaller town. I don't know what.
Yeah, either
West
one.
Yorkshire.
Yeah, I don't know either, but it definitely triggered an alarm with this guy. Now, he feels this is very unusual and it's very concerning because he's a taxi driver. He sees multiple people all day long, probably drives people to other doctors' offices and does not have them dying. So Harold's last victim ends up being 81-year-old Kathleen Grundy. Now, she was a former mayoress of Hyde. and she was found dead in her home June 24th, 1998. Now, Harold was the last person to have seen Kathleen alive, and he also was the one who later signed her death certificate. And he recorded her cause of death to be old age. Now, Harold also advised her family that an autopsy was not needed because she died of just, old age.
Natural causes.
He had also marked cremation on her death certificate, but her family did not want to cremate her, so they chose to bury her. Now, they do bury Kathleen. But Kathleen's daughter, Angela Woodruff, she also happens to be a lawyer. She becomes concerned when she is informed by a colleague of hers that a will had been made by her mother. However, there were doubts about the legitimacy of this will. And the reason for that was because, first of all, it was done like on a typewriter. So that was kind of interesting anyways, because it's the fucking 90s, like late 90s. Most people aren't using typewriters.
Yeah. I think we moved on to computers by then.
we had, there are still typewriters, but for a wealthy individual and a lawyer's office, I don't think that, So that was the first thing. The second thing was the will had actually excluded Angela and her children from her estate. So this will supposedly was like, she gets nothing. My family gets nothing. But it did, however, leave £386,000, which is the equivalent to $500,000, to Dr. Harold Shipman.
Oh, what a nice guy.
Now, the colleague of Angela's urges her, you need to take this to the police because something does not seem right. This whole thing seemed weird. And even Angela was like, this doesn't make sense. My mom.
I feel like maybe it was for a new x-ray machine.
Like, I'm just in my brain, like, she's sitting there going, my mother would not just cut us out of her. Like, it sounds like the family was fine. So there's no reason why Kathleen would cut her daughter off. Like, that doesn't make sense. So she brings this concern to the police. And they do take this seriously, probably because this is like the third time in a couple of months that they have heard Dr. Harold Shipman's name brought up with murder of older people. And so they're like, okay, fine. We're going to go ahead and take this into consideration. So they begin an investigation. Well, part of the investigation is they get permission to exhume Kathleen's body, which she's like, yes, of course, exhume her body. Angela's like, let's do this. So they take her body. And they find that her body contains traces of a drug called diamorphine.
Ooh.
Now, this diamorphine is normally used to control pain in patients with terminal cancer, which Kathleen did not have. So there's zero reasons why she should have diamorphine in her system at all.
Takes the edge off.
So that is enough for them to be like, okay. So they bring charges against Harold based off that because who gave her the diamorphine? Well, who was the last person to have seen her? Okay. And I would assume that if you look at the records of good old Harold, it probably says in there that he gave her diamorphine because he actually kept records of what he was doing as a doctor. But he also probably forged and said that she had some sort of terminal illness, right? And that way his records would look like he was giving it to her for a reason, but really he wasn't. On September 7th, 1998, Harold is arrested and the police do search his property and they find a typewriter. Now, this happens to be the same type of typewriter that was used to type up Kathleen Grundy's will. So police investigate all of the cases now at this point that Harold had signed at least the death certificate on. So they start going through all of these patients of his that have died, and they start with just the ones that he signed the death certificate on, and that's a total of 15. So he signed 15 of them, so they start going through each one of those. In some of those cases, they would exhume those bodies as well. They would test them. They would find diamorphine.
I'm curious how long the diamorphine stays
I don't
in
know.
your system for.
I'm not sure.
Like,
that,
does it
I don't
soak,
know.
like, once you decompose, is it gone? Does it soak into your bones? Like, I'm curious.
I don't know. Now, in all of the cases that they actually searched, they did find that Harold had a pattern of administering diamorphine. Then he would sign their death certificates. Then he would falsify the medical records saying that each patient had been in some sort of poor health to justify the diamorphine. Now, this triggers them to open a huge inquiry into all of his patients at this point, and it is discovered at that point that there were up to 250 victims that he had murdered.
Can you imagine? You're just like digging. All of a sudden, you're seeing this number. It goes from 15 to 250.
And he's a doctor. Like, this is, and these people are elderly. Most of them are elderly people. They trust their doctor. And if you see him, he's not a scary look. Like, he's not creepy. He looks like a normal doctor guy. Like, you'd be like, okay, cool. Like, whatever. I mean, he does not look like mine or your doctor, because my doctor is a woman.
Yeah, and my doctor is cool and everything. But
yeah, your doctor is like young. So it's like we have young doctors, but he was like a normal, like, I don't know. But
if he's ever like, hey, your toe hurts? Here, let me get you some morphine. I'd be like,
You're like, listen here, buddy. I know about Dr. Death. So it is also reported, by the way, that Harold was questioned, obviously, about these murders. And during this time, Harold supposedly denied the murders. He said, no, I didn't murder them. These were my patients. These were what happened. They died of natural causes, or they died of this or that, but he never, he also refused to cooperate. And it is said that he sat with his eyes closed every time they would show him a picture of a victim to be like, well, do you remember this woman, or do you remember this man? And he'd sit with his eyes closed, and then he would yawn and refuse to look at any evidence.
I'm so bored.
But what do we say? What do we say? He has a superiority complex, right? That makes total sense, because he's like, I'm too good for this, right?
Yeah.
So on October 5th of 1999, Harold's trial begins, and he is actually charged with the murders of Irene Turner, Marie West, Jean Lilly, Lizzie Adams, Ivy Lomas, Marie Quinn, Muriel Grimshaw, Kathleen Wagstaff, Nora Natal, Bianca Pomfret, Pamela Hillier, Winifred Malore, Maureen Ward, Kathleen Grundy, and Joan Malia. So he was charged with 15 murders, because that's what they could actually get him for, but they knew that he had up to 250, okay? Now, the charges were murder by lethal injection between the years of 1995 to 1998. Now, remember, he started murdering in 1975, so they were only able to get him for 3 years worth of murders.
That's crazy.
Now, the prosecution brings forth...
Well, maybe that answered my question. Maybe you can't go back more than 3 years,
you're not
or whatever.
Wrong. So the prosecution brings forth some damning evidence, though. They show that through fingerprint technology, that Kathleen did not even handle, touch, or have anything to do with the will that she supposedly signed. So how do you sign a will without leaving your fingerprints? So first of all, they knew that will was not something she had done. They also had computer analysis that shows that Harold had altered medical records. Harold did not know that. So to put it as blatantly as possible, Harold didn't understand computers. Okay. Clearly, because he used a typewriter to type up a fucking will. So in his computer, where his records were. So we'll just use Joan Malia for an example. So Joan's his patient. She's a healthy individual. He kills her with diamorphine. He puts in his medical records, diamorphine administered. Check. She dies. He goes back in later and says, she has been diagnosed with this ailment. She needs diamorphine. But makes that like months before he administered diamorphine.
Covering his tracks.
What he did not know is that every time you go into the computer to change... What?
Like you can see... Like you would see that the diamorphine went in first and then...
Right, it's all time-stamped.
Yeah.
So what he didn't realize is that when he would put in diamorphine and then go and alter the records to say that she was, in poor health 2 months prior to that, well, he didn't realize that typing that in showed that he typed that in after she died. So he didn't realize that the records were timestamped. Right. And so that was a big one, because it was like you went in and altered all these people's records after you said you administered diamorphine, and these records were altered after they died, which means that this was not true. There was also evidence that Harold had pretended to call in emergencies in the presence of family members. So like, for instance, family members would call him and be like, oh my God, my mom is having troubles breathing, come quick. And he'd show up at the house and be like, let me call it in. And he'd pretend to call an emergency in, and then he would cut the call off because the patient would be pronounced dead. So he'd be like, missed it. Darn it.
Shucks.
They also showed that he was prescribing diamorphine to patients who didn't need it, clearly, but all like giving it as a prescription to him too. Not so he wasn't necessarily administering
go home
it.
and take this.
Yeah. So the jury takes all this information. They deliberate for 6 days. And on January 31st, year 2000, Harold Shipman is found guilty on 15 counts of murder and 1 count of forgery. And he receives 15 life sentences plus 4 years for the forging of the will. 15 life sentences.
Yeah, but out of 250 people, like that ain't shit.
Now in 2002, the Home Secretary actually confirmed that a whole life sentence was appropriate for him, which means instead of 15 life sentences, he's never getting out of jail. Because again, you have to remember, depending on your country, 15 life sentences, it just depends on what country you're in. I mean, a life sentence could be 15 years or 10 years, or you don't know. And so they said, listen, he's got so many life sentences, a whole life. In the UK, a whole life means you never get out. So that's what he was given. In January 13th of 2004, Harold ends up taking his own life while he's in his cell in Wakefield Prison. He is found at 6:20 p.m. and declared dead at 8:10 p.m. He had used his bed sheets and tied them to the bars on the windows to hang himself.
Couldn't live with the guilt.
That is not why. At least that's not what people think.
Ooh, let's hear it.
It's part of my shots.
Well, let's get into it then. I'm excited.
So, it is later blamed that the Greater Manchester Police Department, remember the first time they were called in and talked to about Harold Shipman? So it is actually blamed that they had assigned inexperienced police officers to the original case. So they said, it's your guys' fault. And they're like, well, yeah, but see, the thing is, we had some people that they just didn't really know what they were doing. I mean, obviously, they didn't do the basic checks.
Yeah. They came in, asked the doctor. Doctor said no. And they said, all right, good enough
basically.
for me.
And so they're like, our bad. Yeah, we assigned some people that probably shouldn't have been in. And it was found, actually, that after that original call, which was in March of 1998, okay? So in March of 1998, that call was made. The police did their shitty investigation, said there's nothing we can do. It was discovered that Harold actually killed 3 people after that, before he was caught. And you figure he was arrested in September of that year. So he killed 3 more people, which wouldn't have saved 250 lives, but you would have saved those 3.
I feel like if you don't do your job correctly and shit like this happens, you should lose your job.
I mean, fair. But also, I feel like they should have put experienced detectives on the job instead of putting in like newbies, because just because he was a doctor,
but you got a guy going, I think because I'm seeing this like.
No. Remember, it was originally the woman from the funeral home who had a stack load of bodies. Yeah. And it's like, that should have been taken seriously, because you not only had her, but you had a doctor and you had another doctor basically coming forward and say, yeah, this is not normal to have this many deaths. It doesn't equate right. And they were like, yeah, we'll go check it out. And it was like, yeah, you had the records to prove it, but you didn't do anything else to prove otherwise.
Yeah.
Now, it is believed that Harold killed 71 patients while he was working at the Donnybrook practice, and the remainder of his victims were while he had his own practice. So most of them were while he had his own practice. There were 171 female victims and 44 male victims. So majority of them were female.
Yeah, when you read the names off of who
they're all women.
Yeah, who he got nailed for, it was women.
Yes. Now, some of the family members of his victims were relieved to know that he had died in jail. They were relieved because they were like, well, we know at least he's dead. However, a very large portion of the victims' family members felt that they had been cheated, because now they would never know, number one, why he did it, or number two, get maybe a confession that he actually did it. Because remember, like you said, only 15 people is what he was held accountable for. Now, he went into jail and went to his grave saying he did not murder these people. He never confessed to anything, ever.
Well, maybe in his mind, he was doing them a favor.
Agree.
their age, their ailments, whatever.
They actually, there's quite a few people out there who believe that his reason for doing this was because he watched his mother in pain and he watched the morphine save her from that pain. And so when he would meet elderly people, if he thought or if he felt or thought that they were too old, or if he felt or thought that they were in pain, he was trying to put them out of their misery. And he was trying to save them, which very well could be. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right and whatever. But that, you're not wrong. That's what a lot of people actually think.
Maybe that's where the Angel of Death nickname comes into
Yeah, but
play.
he's not an angel of death.
No, he's not.
Now, it does actually remain unknown as to why he killed himself. He did not actually like leave any sort of a suicide note. However, it was reported that he did have a conversation with his probation officer while he was in prison. And he had told his probation officer that if he killed himself, his wife would remain financially secure and she would continue to get his pension. If he had lived past the age of 60, she would not have been entitled to his pension anymore. So do the math for me, okay?
Well, hold on just real quick. The Angel of Death, it's a figure in some religions that it's the person escorting the soul from life to death.
Yeah, I still wouldn't call him that because he's not escorting shitting. He's shitting. He's not asking shit. He's not escorting shit. He's forcing something. That's not the same thing. That's not the same thing. That's why I'm like, no. So, okay, so he was born in 1946 and he died in 2004. How old was he?
58.
Okay, so he died at 58. Had he made it to the age of 60, his wife would not have been entitled to his pension and would no longer have been financially secure. So the thought is, and I actually think that is why.
Yeah, sure. He's probably like, well, I'm going to rot in here.
Exactly. He's going to be in jail for the rest of his life. And his wife, his family. Okay, I'm not going, this is going to be hard. Apologies. I'm really not trying to be anything but telling the things. However, if you see pictures of him with his family, he literally looks like a family man. And he literally looks like he cared a lot about his family.
Well, and if in his mind, he didn't feel like he was doing anything wrong.
Correct. So I can't say that he's the worst of the worst serial killers because I don't think I killing people is wrong. This is one of the few times I would venture to say, I don't know if he actually viewed it as wrong. Like you said, I don't know if I think he purposely did it. I think he purposely administered lethal doses to people, but I think he did it maybe because he thought that they needed it because he probably is a little messed up. I mean, he watched his mother die. I don't know what the main reason is because he had a relatively good life, but sometimes there's things like that trigger people to fucking just view things a certain way, right? But I would believe that he would kill himself to save for his wife because at the end of the day, I do think that he was a family man and I really do think he loved his family. And so I could see that being like his final, like, yeah, obviously I'm going to be here forever. There's no chance of me getting out, especially after being told I have a whole life sentence. But if I live past the age of 60, my wife now doesn't get taken care of. So I don't know his reasoning. That is the theory behind it. And I believe that theory 100%.
Yeah, I could see that theory.
And that is not to make him sound like the best person in the world. I'm just trying to be truthful about it because it's one of those things that while it's really awful and horrific what he did, when you research him and you look at things and you see pictures of him with his family, you also have a hard time going, really? You really did that? Like you have a hard time looking at this person and thinking that they're a terrible person. You know what I mean? And like you said, his method was not vicious. I mean, brutal, right? It's not like that. So it's a very weird thing. I still think he deserved to be in jail. There's no way, shape, or form that I would say that he did not deserve to be in jail. But I agree with you. I think that there's a good chance that what he did, he really didn't think was murder. He thought he was putting people out of their misery, even though he was changing their records later. That doesn't mean that he didn't always think, or maybe he viewed older people as being people who were, on their way out the door. I don't know. Now there is a memorial garden for all of Harold's victims in Hyde Park, and it's called the Garden of Tranquility. So that
sounds like a nice place.
That is the story of Harold Shipman. I told you, he's nothing fantastical, okay? But he's also interesting in the fact that you kind of It's weird. It's just I don't hate him like I hate the I know that's weird. I don't hate him like I hate the others.
Well, and what's interesting, and again, it's probably due to the times that it happened in, but you look at how long, I think it was 23 or something like that, years that he was doing this
to 98.
for. So 24 years. Like, at some point, you wonder if that reputation, like, how does the word not get out? Like, hey, 250 people over 24 years, that's 10 a year.
Right. But again, you have to remember most of his victims were literally 70s and 80s years old.
Yeah.
So when you look at that, most people probably look at that and go, well, I mean, they're older. Like, older people die. And when you look at his records, it shows that they all had ailments that could have killed them.
And maybe there are some in there that knew and went to him for that. I don't know.
No, I don't.
There was a whole thing that was going on there for a while that people were like finding people to help them.
Well, it's not illegal, I don't think, in the UK. It's illegal in the United States, but assisted suicide is not illegal in other countries. That's why people leave the United States to go to other countries to do it, because it's not illegal. I don't know if the UK is one of them. That's why for me, I'm like, I don't think so, because I don't know what UK is, but UK is a lot like a lot of the other countries, European countries. Like, they have stem cell research and shit, and we're not even allowed. The United States, it's like against the law for that kind of stuff. So this is one of those scenarios that I don't think anybody viewed him as being an end of life doctor, especially because, like I said, his medical records, when they look at him, all of his medical records of people who died, the ailments were input after they died. So none of those people would have come to him with an actual disease to be like, hey, I heard you kill people. Like, none of them, because all of his records were altered after. So he was killing people to kill people for whatever reason. But I don't, like I said, I don't hate him as much as I hate some of the other ones. And maybe it's just because he wasn't brutal about it. Maybe it's because he wasn't mentally fucked up in a way. I mean, he was obviously, something was wrong, because that's not a normal thought process, but it's just weird.
It's probably the gruesome factor.
I do think it's probably well, and like I said, I saw pictures of him with his family. I literally saw pictures of him and his family together, him and his 4 kids and his wife, and they all looked very happy, and they looked like a normal family that you would just like hang out with. And he looks like a normal doctor. So it's really hard to wrap your brain around it and be like, really, that's what you chose to do, And I'm sure his family is probably like, what the fuck? Like, I'm sure they're appalled too. I'm not, but at the end of the day, he's a serial killer that I wanted to talk about, because I want to talk about all of them at some point. And it is interesting. You see the array of serial killers that we talk about. We talk about some of the worst of the worst. He's not one of the worst of the worst. He's not good. None of them are good, but he's not the worst that we've ever talked about. He's just kind of average. He's just like the average serial killer.
Yeah.
And to be fair, he's not, in my mind, people have their views. And when I think of serial killers, I always think of somebody who like wants to kill people and then take credit for it. And that wasn't him either. He never admitted to it. He said he never murdered these people. And so in his mind, whatever the case may be, he did not think he killed these people. I mean, he knows he administered stuff, but his reasoning was because they needed it. I don't know, for whatever reason.
Yeah, he needed it.
Anyways, yes. So thank you very much for listening to us talk about Harold Shipman. If you like the things that you hear, and if you like hanging out with us on these Thursdays, make sure you're following us, and feel free to send us any messages through emails, DMs, or on any of our socials. If you have any input or anything you would like to tell us, we are always open for conversation. Other than that, thank you again for listening to me and Jay tell you the story of Harold Shipman, the Doctor of Death. Until next week, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Remember to lock your doors and bar your windows. Until next time.